Welcome back. If you're watching this video, you need a review of interval notation, or you may have never have used it before. So we're going to look at writing answers using interval notation. And to do that, we're going to use a little bit of what you do know, which is set notation when you use inequalities or when you graph a function on a number line. So if you look at the left-hand side, all of us have written answers using inequality signs. Less than or equal to, less than, greater than or equal to, or greater than, and then the combination of them. And also, we've also done some graphing as well on the number line. So remember why you do this. You do you do the inequality notation or the graph to show that there's more than one answer, and you can't list all the answers. So these are representing answers that go on forever, and there's an infinite number of solutions. So when you graph it, that's why you shade in the number line. So you're not just talking about whole numbers, you're talking about all the numbers in between, fractions, decimals, radicals, all kinds of things. So you can't list them, with commas between them, basically. So today we're going to talk about this new notation called interval notation, which is just kind of a shortcut way to write the graphical form of it. I don't know that it's any shorter than inequality notation, but it's easier to do this when you're typing and writing answers because you don't need these special symbols. So in math and typically in higher level courses, we use the interval notation. So just a couple things about interval notation, and then we'll just look at this and then do a few examples. So interval notation is always two numbers, okay? Always has two numbers, that's it. And then on each side of those two numbers, you're going to have either a parentheses or you'll have a bracket. And it depends on these numbers. So a parentheses means you don't include the number, and a bracket means you do include the number. So for infinity and negative infinity, since those go on forever and ever, we're not going to close them in because they don't really end. So for infinity and negative infinity, you always use a parentheses. For whole numbers, then you're going to use, or the numbers that you have other than infinity, it depends on whether or not you're including it or not. So a bracket is included, a parentheses would be not included. So take a look at these and let's kind of look at how this works. So on a graph, if you were graphing x is less than or equal to a would be a closed circle because you're including it, and you would shade to the left and you would shade the arrow to the left. When you shade an arrow, that means you're going towards negative infinity on the left-hand side. If you shade on the right-hand side, like this one down here, then you would be going to positive infinity. So that would be one of the numbers in your interval, okay? So look at this problem. We've got everything less than or equal to a. So when you write the interval, the two numbers you're going to be using would be negative infinity and a, and you have to write them in the correct order. The smaller number, or the number that's to the left, has to come first. So this would be from negative infinity up to a. So you have to go in order the way that the numbers go on the number line. So we have a parentheses, always for the infinities, and then a bracket because we are including a. For the one right below it, x is less than a. It's the same graph except you're not including a. So remember when you do the graph, it's an open circle. Well, on an interval, it would be a parentheses. Okay, so from negative infinity to a, not including a. All right, same thing for these, so let's just run through them. So this one's x greater than or equal to a, so we're going from a to positive infinity. So a to positive infinity, including a, always a parentheses with infinity. Greater than a would be not including a, and everything towards infinity. So a to infinity, parentheses on both sides, so we're not including a. All right, sometimes when you do a graph, you're graphing between two numbers. So this would be all numbers between a and b, including a and b, right? That's what that graph is. So we'd have closed circles on both ends, and then you're shading in between. So now the two numbers that you're using in your interval are a and b, and you're including both. So we would go from a to b with brackets on both sides. No infinity on this one because we didn't shade an arrow, okay? All right, the next one, same graph, except you're not including a and b. Everything between a and b, but not including. So we would go from a to b, parentheses on both sides. Please keep in mind, smaller number has to be on the left. Okay, you have to write these in order as they come on the graph from left to right. All right, now, If you have more than one part of a graph shaded, then you would have two separate intervals and you would combine them using a union sign, which is like a capital U. So if you look at this graph, we have all numbers less than or equal to all numbers less than or equal to A, and all numbers greater than or equal to B. So it's two separate inequalities, two separate parts of the graph. So we would just look at this graph first. So we went from negative infinity to A. So there's the first part, and we'd use a bracket. And then we'd say union, because we're also going to shade in from B to positive infinity. So bracket around B to positive infinity. The one on the bottom is exactly the same, except you're not including A and B. So notice parentheses are there instead of brackets. Okay, so that's pretty much it for interval notation. If you have trouble with it, I always tell students sometimes it's easy to do a number line graph first and then write your answer from there. Some of you have a hard time going from here to here, so it'll just take you a little bit of practice. Okay, so let's go through these questions here real quick and see if we can do the right interval notation. All right, so we have x is greater than or equal to 6. Okay, so greater than or equal to 6 would be numbers bigger than 6. So we would start at 6 and we would go to infinity. Okay, so that would be the same exact answer as what's up here, but this is interval notation. Okay, part B, all numbers less than 10. That would go from negative infinity to 10, right? You'd shade to the left of 10. So negative infinity to 10, and we're not including 10, so it would have a parentheses. All right, part C, all numbers between negative 4 and 13. You're not including negative 4, but you are including 13. So that would be a parentheses by negative 4, and you go all the way to 13. If you wanted to look at the graph of that, so here's what I'm saying. For those of you who might have a little trouble with this, you would do negative 4, here's 13, not including negative 4, you are including 13, and you would shade in here, right? That's what that would look like. So if that helps, then that would help you maybe write the answer, so that's fine if you need to use that. Okay, part D, I'm going to graph this one first. So how would you do on an interval everything, all real numbers except for the number 7? So let's look at the graph of that. All real numbers except for the number 7. So we would put a circle at 7 because we can't use it, but we would shade this way, right? And we would shade this way. So when there's a gap, that's an interval. So we're going to have negative infinity to 7, don't include 7, and then we can start on the other side of 7 and go to positive infinity. So that's a double inequality, so we're going to need the union sign. So we would go from negative infinity to 7, don't include it, and then don't include it again and go to positive infinity. Okay. Those sometimes hang you guys up until you get a little bit better at it, but that's how you leave out a number. You would just put a union with it and then go from one to the other. All right, part E, all numbers less than negative 9 or greater than negative 4. So this is the smaller number. So numbers less than negative 9 would go from negative infinity to negative 9, not including it. And then we would union it with everything bigger than negative 4. So that would go to positive infinity. Okay. All right. This says all real numbers greater than or equal to 2, but not 5. So maybe this would be another one we would want to graph. So we got 2 and we have 5. X can't equal 5, so that would be an open circle. Greater than or equal to 2 is everything greater than or equal to 2. So since I have a gap here, then I'm going to have two intervals. So 2 to 5 and then 5 to infinity. Okay, so anytime you got that open circle, you got to break it up. So this would be a bracketed 2, go to 5, don't include 5, and then you would have 5 to positive infinity. All right, last one. All real numbers except for negative 1 and except for 5. So x can't be negative 1, x can't be 5. So again, look at the number line. Here's -1, here's 5. Can't use that, but I can use everything else. I can use all of this. I can use all of this. And I can use all of this. So if you notice, you're going to have 3 intervals on this one. We're going to do this interval, and this interval. So here's -infinity, there's positive infinity. You have to write the numbers in order. So we're going to go from -infinity to -1. Don't include it. Then we're going to go from -1 to 5. Don't include those. And lastly, we'll go from 5 to infinity. So it's not necessarily a shortcut way of writing answers, but it is the way that in math, that's the way we write those. Okay, so look at that. So we go from -infinity to -1. Can't use -1, so that's the parentheses. Then I can go from -1 to 5. Can't use 5. And then I can start up again after 5 and go to positive infinity. Okay, so that's what we call interval notation. That's what you'll need from here on out. Sometimes you will have to do, sometimes they will ask you to write it this way, but typically you will be writing the interval form. Okay? All right, so that's it for the quick review. If you need any more help with it, just let me know. Otherwise, you can continue on with the notes for the next section.